Hi, Mark. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, very well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks.
Perfect. So, yeah, if you could introduce yourself and Real Desk for the benefit of the podcast.
For sure. So my name's Mark Sykes. I'm the founder and chief desk jockey at Real Desk. And Real Desk is a startup that aims to eliminate inefficiency in real estate.
Mm,
So we've created a platform that streamlines and automates basically all of the back office activity that is required to run a real estate brokerage, which is quite a complex, web of different capabilities and workflows, transaction management, documents, financials, payments, trust accounting, and so on. And we're trying to do all that within one platform. So you're using one platform instead of many different disconnected systems. It eliminates rekeying, duplicate data entry, and so on. And then, of course, as well, as the name kind of implies, we're really sort of foregrounding AI and bringing all of that like modern technology to bear on this problem. So using generative AI, machine learning, various sort of fintech innovations around embedded payments and so on, and just trying to make the real estate broker and agent and admin's lives a lot easier, eliminate all the typing and the like mindless sort of busy work that they often have to do.
brilliant. Yeah, so they can focus on what they do the best, right?
Yeah, nobody really like in this industry wants to spend more time in front of a computer, right? They'll want to spend less time. They want to spend more time in front of clients doing deals. For brokers, they want to spend more time recruiting and retaining and developing agents.
Mhm.
Even admins, like they would rather be, working with agents directly, um, helping generate more business for the brokerage, right? Rather than a lot of just the sort of like click ops that they need to do to just like get deals paid out or anything like that.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And what geographies, what markets are you working in currently?
So right now we're working with brokerages across Canada. Eventually we will go into the US as well. Primarily or exclusively now though we're in Canada.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. So talk to me a bit about the journey. So how long has Real Desk been going? And when did you decide that you wanted to do something like this?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in prop tech, fintech, real estate my whole career. So about 15 years now, a little bit more.
Mm,
And I think I've kind of seen the prop tech from all angles. I've worked on solutions for mortgage brokers, for mortgage lenders, big data
mm,
models to perform valuations on properties so that you don't have to have expensive, very manual appraisals being done, people wandering into your house and taking pictures and so on, when you can just do it via statistical model. There's so much data out there. I've worked on legal conveyance solutions. And it was really a few years ago that I got most interested in sort of the brokerage operations market. I
mm,
noticed that, I mean, real estate in general is fairly, I would say, underserved from a technology standpoint, certainly from an innovation standpoint. But even within the realtor and realtors and the brokers world, there's been a lot more innovation. I'd say more on the sales and marketing, CRM ends of things. There's some interesting stuff going on there. And of course, everybody's now playing around with generative AI for social media content and things like that. But there was really very little to no innovation on the back office. So trust accounting and forms and transaction management, document management, and so on.
mm.
Really, there was very little. And yet that's where a lot of kind of the delay and the waste and like the problems tend to be. So really got interested with trying to solve this space. So Real Desk has been around for about a year and a half.
Mm.
We've just been building that technology up, just bringing on more capabilities, starting to build out more AI models and more payment innovations and things like that to try to address that problem better.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm presuming because there's not been many other businesses doing the same thing, or the real estate market's been a bit forgotten in the back end side of things. The
Mhm.
uptick's been perfect with real estate agents and brokers going ahead.
Yeah, I wish I could say that. there's like in any industry, there's going to be a bit of resistance to change, right? Like the solutions that are out there are certainly not perfect. There's a lot of legacy technology that's been around for a really long time, has very steep learning curves. It's
Mm.
fairly inefficient. Like I said, there's also a lot of disconnected systems where you're using multiple different tools to process a deal through kind of end to end. There's a
Mm.
lot of also more generalized office tools than specific real estate oriented tools. So people are still using email, uh, spreadsheets, things like that.
Yeah.
And so for sure, there's room for better technology.
Yeah.
But people are also very familiar in a lot of cases with those kinds of tools, whether it's the legacy stuff or whether it's the general sort of office suite. They've been doing it
Mm.
that way for a long time. They're used to it. And so, yeah, for sure, there's going to always be some, uh, not even necessarily resistance, but questioning. And it certainly takes some time as well to spread like the awareness of what we're doing. It's
Yeah.
probably important to know that even though a lot of the real estate brokerages in Canada sort of fall within one of the major franchise networks like Century 21, Remax, Royal LePage, and so on, those head offices don't prescribe, for the most part, the systems that the individual franchise owners have to use.
Mm.
So that basically means that there's, 5,000 residential real estate brokerages in Canada, and we're like block and tackling it, going to each one and trying to convince them why we can do a better job than whatever they're using today.
Yeah.
So even though there's definitely, again, a need for what we're doing, it's not a simple road where you can just like make a couple of deals and instantaneously you've got, 80% of the market or something. It's definitely a slow kind of incremental creative process.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think it comes down to it being one of the more traditional industries. So like financial services, property, real estate, yeah, we've got accountancy, selling any sort of tech solution into these businesses is always going to be slower versus selling into like a marketing agency to provide them with a back end solution or marketing
Mhm.
new so that they're used to adopting new things. Um, but I think a lot of the benefit of selling into the traditional businesses is that when you are working with them and you are getting the case studies and people start talking about it, it can very quickly spread around through word of mouth, because they're so connected and they tend to know everyone within the industry. So yeah, I can see how the initial challenge can be harder, but when you're in, then it can snowball.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like we've gotten most of the customers that we have to date from word of mouth and referrals, right? Up until fairly recently, we really weren't doing a lot of advertising, social media, and so
Mm.
on. I'm trying to do more of that now, of course, as we try to scale.
Mm.
But up until fairly recently, it was really mostly people would hear about us, or people would move from one brokerage to another, or somebody would strike out on their own and start a new brokerage and be familiar with our platform from when they worked with it before, and they'd call us up. So, that's great. I mean, it's a really good vote of confidence, of course, when people go from one place to another and have a choice and choose to come back to the tool that they've used before. So that definitely happens.
Mm.
I mean, one of the obstacles as well for particularly the kind of platform that we have, as opposed to say, a new social media tool or some sort of app that you can very easily try out. And if you don't like it, you can sort of discard it after a couple months. The nature of our platform, because we're doing transaction management and accounting and so on, like there's a certain commitment. And once you're on, not that to say that it's impossible to ever leave, right? But there is a centralization of all of those very vital business activities. So that means, particularly when we're seeking to disrupt a legacy player, we have
Yeah.
to really go to some pretty great lengths to prove that we can do what they need us to do, to prove that we can deliver efficiency gains, and to really sort of de-risk that whole adoption, onboarding, training process. Because if it doesn't work out, the brokers see this as potentially a pretty big gamble and it could be quite disruptive to their operation. So it's something we've really had to be sensitive to and
Mm.
spend a lot of time building the right kinds of materials and the right kind of onboarding processes to make sure that we get this right and we deliver that value right out of the gate.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Okay. And what does that actually look like in de-risking it for the businesses? So will it be like running adjacent systems to what they already have to show them? How does that work?
Sometimes, sometimes it means that that onboarding process is a bit gradual. But
Yeah.
what it really means is that we spend a lot of time upfront before we go live doing, configuration. So if you're moving accounting systems over, making sure that you're inheriting the right balances and things like that. Sometimes it means that they have to do a lot of work, which we help them with, of course, in terms of getting everything up to date for when we're
Mm.
going to be cutting over from one system to another. But a lot of it is really just making sure that everything is set up the way that suits their business. So
Mm.
RealDesk has certain things that automatically just sort of work out of the box, right? So every province in Canada has slightly different rules about the money movement, around how documents are dealt with, who does what. So those are automatic within the platform. I can go in and switch the province from BC to Alberta, and it will seamlessly start following Alberta conveyance flows and money movement flows and so on. But then there's other pieces that are a little bit more individualized to each brokerage, like what forms do they want to use for different types of deals, at what stage of the deal, what, abilities do they want their agents to have to do certain things or not be able to do certain things. So we just spend a lot of time getting to know the customers and that at that early stage. And as we start to onboard and train, there's just a lot of time and attention paid to making sure that we understand what those workflows are so that we can set them up in a way where it's going to instantly work out of the box and they don't need to change the way that they're doing things.
Nice. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's interesting as well. I didn't realize the nuances between the different states, the changes in the process. So that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay. So I'd like to talk about the go to market. So you mentioned initially it's been a lot of word of mouth referrals, people
Yep.
moving between different businesses and wanting to still work with RealDesk, the RealDesk platform. So we spoke briefly before that you're testing and trying different cold strategies at the moment to grow the business. But before we go into what you're doing now, before you initially started the cold strategies, what did you think was going to be the winner?
Right. And so I think if you'd asked me a year or a year and a half ago when we were really just first ramping up, I probably would have said that a combination of email outreach followed up with calls,
Mm,
and then, sort of the traditional B2B sales funnel, I suppose, right? Discovery call,
yeah.
demo, proposal, negotiation contract, like
Yeah.
that would work. That, has worked for other similar platforms in the past and other similar types of companies that I've worked with in the past.
Yeah.
And one of the advantages that we have is that we know who our target customers are. Like I said, there's probably, somewhere around 5,000
Mm,
brokerages in Canada, and we can even identify a subset from that based on, some of the larger provinces that we're targeting and types of brokerages that we're targeting. So we know who they are. We know who the brokers are. They're real estate brokerages, so it's kind of to their benefit to make sure that people know where to find them. So they're not hiding, and there's no real ambiguity around that. And that this number is small enough that, yeah, you can easily do targeted email campaigns and calls and so on. I think what we found subsequent to that, like over the last year or so, is that those strategies in general across the board, it has nothing to do with Real Desk or with prop tech or with organized real estate. It's really just those strategies overall are way less effective than they used to be, just because
mm,
of the volume and how easy it is for really any business to be able to do those kinds of sequences, right? You can go and spend $20 a month and you can be sending out multi-channel or iteration sequences to everybody. And same thing with LinkedIn and lots of other channels for cold outreach. And our target customers, usually the owner of a given, small to medium real estate office is doing, you know, a dozen different jobs, right? They're doing their own deals. They're usually one of the top producing agents in their brokerage, if not the top producing agent. They're, like I said, recruiting and retaining agents. They're overseeing the financial operations. They're the managing broker, so they're dealing with all of the different documents and deals that are submitted by their agents, doing that sort of oversight responsibility. So they're doing lots of different things. They're super busy. They get a ton of email, ton of calls, and it's just very difficult to reach them, or to really sort of get their attention, particularly if people don't know who you are. And we're still building up our name and our awareness. So that's some of the initial challenges, I guess, that we encountered and why we, you know, have been sort of pivoting, if you want to put it that way,
Mm.
but just running different kinds of experiments on different kinds of channels.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think another factor being that the businesses that are maybe competitors for us, but I wouldn't say we do it in the same way, but the sales growth, lead gen sort of businesses are always targeting real estate brokers. So they're
Yeah.
probably being hit more than anyone else for creating like them selling the dream and everything like that.
Yeah.
And
Any
any
small business owner, any founder, I mean, put founder or put CEO in your title and see how much LinkedIn outreach you immediately start to get, right? It's going to be web development, SEO, all kinds of branding stuff, all kinds of outsourcing, social media content, all of that. And so, as small business owners, our brokers, broker owners and so on are going to get all of that same outreach. And then lots of different systems as well. Every day, somebody's starting new apps for realtors, for brokers. Again, mostly it's in, that lead generation, social media,
yeah.
sales, trying to get them more leads, right? Because that's what most agents especially are most concerned with. It's probably rarely in the back office. I don't think there's that many new trust accounting platforms that get launched, on a daily or yearly basis. But it's still very easy for a platform like ours, as disruptive as we are, to
Mm.
get lost sort of in that shuffle of all of the different uh, offers of services and products that brokers are getting.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think are you happy to share a bit of the focus for the strategy for the next like 6 months, what you're testing at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to. It's really just all of the other different, go-to-market motions that you can have. I
Mm.
remember reading this study a while back. I think it's called like the six different go-to-market motions, right? And I'm not probably going to get all of them right, but really, we talked about outbound. Then you have the next one logically is inbound, right? And so we're doing certainly a lot more of that. We're doing more LinkedIn, Instagram posting. Like Instagram seems to be pretty popular
Mm.
for agents and brokers. Now a lot of brokerages are on there. So all of our customers, at the brokerage level have their own accounts. And they're putting posts about meet the agent, here's a new listing, we did this. They're posting their social events and all that, right? So
Mm.
that's a good place for us to be doing postings and things like that, and then trying to just draw awareness and potentially bring people in. We're trying to develop more targeted content on our website as well. We're doing more to show off the platform, which also sort of speaks to that like de-risking aspect, right? If you can go on like our YouTube channel, for instance, and you can now and see probably like we probably got close to 20 videos about different aspects of the product, right? And you can sort of walk through. We're going to have more and more and make it all public as we go.
Mm.
That helps too. So that sort of stuff is all sort of to draw that inbound piece. And
Mm.
then other channels like partners. There's lots of other disruptive, innovative, startup type of real estate tools that are out there that
Yeah.
aren't directly in our space, but they're selling to a lot of the same audiences. So, for instance, we're, in the process of teaming up with a pretty innovative new compliance platform called Illumini,
Okay.
also Canadian out of Vancouver, BC. And they sell to the same brokerages and to the same managing brokers as we do, but it's actually a very complementary
Mm.
product. We're looking to sort of create an integration or a bundled offering there. Lots of other examples that I could tell, but that helps because all of us, and I can think of half a dozen or more other companies that are in that same position.
Yeah.
We all have very small go-to-market teams, so we can't actually call everybody,
Yeah.
but we can, work with other folks to sort of see who might be more receptive to new technology. Um, Events, different, like we have provincial real estate associations and sort of regional
Mm.
or local real estate boards here. They often have trade shows, golf tournaments, things like that. You don't necessarily, directly make sales at that, but it's
Yeah.
good to show up. People understand who you are. They get the chance to chat with you,
Yeah.
maybe, take a brochure or something like that. And then it just, gives you that kind of awareness. So, that's probably in a nutshell
Yeah.
a lot of what we're doing. But yeah, just looking at all of those different kinds of potential go-to-market motions.
Yeah.
Maybe, if you want to use a gambling analogy, you're kind of putting a few chips on like many different parts of the roulette wheel,
Yeah.
and kind of seeing what seems to work or doesn't. So I think, down the road, not too far, we'll probably start to focus in a little bit more
Mm.
because it's very difficult as a small company to cover multiple channels like that.
Yeah.
But right now, we're really in a phase of trying to figure out like what are the best ways
Mm.
to reach the kinds of customers that we want to, and really just, spread the awareness of who we are and the kind of value that we can provide to customers.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So I think if I was to group the strategies that you're seeing more success in now, and the strategies that is similar to what we like suggest or we implement for our clients, is the strategies that is hard to do. So not
For
the
sure.
stuff that's in very low resistance and anyone can pick up, but it's the stuff that takes a bit more time to fine tune and actually get set up and start speaking to these people, reaching out to them, doing the harder things, because everyone tends to just steer for the easy route.
Right.
So yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yeah. And that's the tricky part too, right? Because whenever you're a small startup, and I'm sure all businesses have this, right? But especially as a small startup, low number of people, small budget, and just a limited amount of time. So I know, I wish it maybe weren't this way, but it is. When you're
Mm.
going to post on social media, for instance, right? There's a big difference between just posting something that basically says we're the best, or like a generic picture or meme or something with a logo. I mean, we still do some of that to kind of just, keep posting and so on. Not everything can be like a white paper.
Yeah.
But if you really want to create engagement, it just makes sense, right? You have to offer some value.
Yeah.
And something like, here are actionable strategies that you can use, whether you use our platform or not. Here are actionable strategies that you can use to implement AI
Yeah.
to save you time, or implement different types of techniques around your financial processes and the
Yeah.
kinds of things that we do. Here's what you need to be worried about in terms of a real estate council
Mm.
audit, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to share that sort of content, but of course, writing something like that takes a lot more time than lots of other things you could be doing, right? Like the number of cold calls you could probably make in the time that it takes you to create a white paper or an article or something
Yeah.
like that. It's vastly different, right? But at the end of the day, if you offer more value, then you'll get more return because people are, of course, going to be more attracted to the things that provide value to them. And that's what we want to be able to do, is provide value to our target customers.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think if anyone listening is thinking, okay, well, how much value and stuff like that, we tend to recommend doing three gives to every ask. So
Right.
every time that you want any of your prospects to have seen three of your informational bits of content or giving away something, before then you message them.
Mhm. And it's
And
the same with like, one of the channels that I maybe didn't mention specifically in that experimentation section, just because it's sort of always been there, is just, we still do get a lot of referrals and things like that from our existing customers and, suggestions about what we
Mhm.
could do and how we could message. Sometimes we run some of the target messaging that we have, like by our customers to say, would you click on that? Or,
Yeah.
what drew you into the platform? What was your aha moment where in a demo or when you started using it where you saw value right away so that we can learn from that. But yeah, I can tell you, like, I actually a lot of times find it really uncomfortable to actually ask customers for things, whether it's like asking for referrals or asking them to do something like that, just because, as it is, like we're a rapidly evolving platform.
Mm.
So, they end up wittingly or unwittingly testing new features a lot of the time. They're also paying us, so that's
Yeah.
extremely important, right? So it's like you're already providing me a lot, but I can say that when I have those conversations, almost always like the response is like, of course, Mark, we
Mm.
want to help. Like we'll do what we can. We will, call other people, or if there's a customer that you're trying to bring on board and they want to have a reference call, like I've never been turned down
No.
by anybody when I've asked somebody to do that, right? So that the asking can be awkward, but I'm starting to try to embody that whole advice or truism that people say, right? Which is like if you don't ask, you don't get, and the worst they can say is no, that kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
that's also part of it. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying about you got to provide value first,
Mm.
but I would also tell people like once you have provided value, and if you know that you are, then maybe be less shy about asking for
Yeah.
stuff because people definitely can help you. Like you mentioned, real estate's a community. It's, kind of like there's competition, but brokerages are also cooperating on deals all of the time, right? And so there are those relationships that you can, um, be part of to an extent. Again, if you are providing that value.
Definitely. Definitely. No, that makes sense. Mark, you mentioned a couple of times that it's a smaller team. So just
Mhm.
so the listeners, what does the team look like currently, and have you had other people come and leave the business?
Um, so yeah, we've got like the team other than me is for the most part a technical team, right?
Mm.
So we're still in that stage where we're primarily a product company, right? We have to evolve to really being a growth company or a sales and marketing company. So I'm a product person by background. Um, and then I have three full stack engineers or basically tech leads that work for me. And they each have a different area of the platform that sort of represents like the major kinds of developments that we're trying to do. So one person is sort of on the architecture
Mm.
side, like making the platform more open and collaborative. We have this idea of trying to, break down a lot of those silos that tend to exist in a real estate deal. So in the future, we're hoping that it will be much easier to be for different like professionals to be able to collaborate together, even
Mm.
if they're using different systems, kind of in the same way that, you could be on a Mac right now and I'm on a PC, somebody else could be on an iPhone, and through Zoom, it doesn't matter because we can
Yeah.
still have a call and it works just as well everywhere. We have that sort of vision. We have another tech lead who works on more of sort of the R&D side, right? So various fintech payment innovations, as well as a lot of the work that we're starting to do with AI and machine learning. And the third is really oriented around customer and user experience,
Mm.
making everything simpler. So I think I mentioned before, these legacy platforms traditionally have been I'd say kind of ugly, but more importantly, like very difficult to learn to use. They sort of harken back to the days when these platforms used to come with 300-page manuals, and people actually used to read them, right? And that's just not the way it works anymore. So we need to have a platform that is modern, that is visually and appealing, that is intuitive. So that's kind of the team right now. I also have a fractional marketing person who helps me with some of the more maybe like the technical aspects of lead generation and marketing campaigns because we still do a lot of campaign work and so on. But yeah, that's pretty much the team right now.
Nice.
We will bring on more folks later on, probably more on like the sales or the marketing front, as well as more technical people. We'll need more machine learning engineers and things like that. But for now, we've kept the team relatively small,
Nice.
and focused really on like the core of developing the best possible platform that we can have and figuring out how we're going to scale it. And then once we kind of figure that out, then we can add the right skill sets in the right areas.
Yeah.
Rather than, if we did that now, we might be bringing on people who have, like, say, like a very, outbound oriented skill set. But
Yeah.
then if we decide 3 months from now, okay, outbound's not the play,
Yeah.
that becomes a little awkward.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, that makes sense. So sticking to the core team, developing it out, everyone has their expertise, and
Yeah.
not hiring too fast in a startup because you could change path and then it's yeah, you have to get rid of people.
And if you raised, 10 million bucks in venture capital, then you can weather those pivots and it's not a problem.
Yeah.
We've chosen not to do that, right? I don't know if I'm, just jumping ahead, right? But we've chosen to bootstrap up to this point. We
Mm,
could potentially take on, venture capital and so on, but that puts you on a certain timeline,
mm,
of needing to solve these kinds of problems really fast, right? Like what's the channel and can you prove the growth and the scaling? Like you need to figure that out very, very quickly. And it also puts you on sort of a binary success or failure path, right?
mm,
Because it's like you're going to put so much money into this and burn through so much cash, and either it's going to work or it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, then you're done. So whereas, now we're something where we can grow slowly, we can keep it stable, we can take some time to focus on the product or focus on the experiments and so on, and then we
mm.
can start to scale up as we need to, but we're not beholden to an investor's timeline necessarily, or, we don't feel pressured to we must triple revenue in the next year or so because I also don't want to do things that are really just about growing more quickly and then not being able to deliver to customers. Because
Mm.
what I'm finding in real estate is it takes quite a while to gain people's trust and not very long at all to lose it.
Yeah.
So, if we aren't able to deliver the right kind of value, or if we are actively destructive to people's operations, we won't be around for very long. So doing it at this pace really gives us the opportunity, kind of like I was saying with the onboarding before,
Mm.
to take a very deliberate, measured, and if anything, like overly, service-oriented approach to each customer. Like every time we bring on a new customer now, it's like you will succeed. You will, find this platform to be amazing. We're going to spend as much time and as much resources as we need to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, yeah, nice. And then yeah, if you did take on investment, I could see how that could turn into a bit of a machine, and the onboarding is just a process, and if people churn, they churn. So yeah,
There's an aspect to that for sure, right? And I'm not saying that people shouldn't take on investment. Like there's lots of different types of businesses where that's really required. You can't scale a company in certain types of industries or time frames or whatever without it. And I'm not even saying that we won't at some point go that route, but
mm,
we'll go that route when we feel more confident that we've figured some of these things out. And it's like, okay, if you give us that money we know, right? Like we know sort of the input to output
yeah,
ratio. And I'm always sort of jealous. I've talked to other entrepreneurs who are a little bit further along and they've sort of figured that out to say, if I add one more rep or if I add X amount more of marketing spend, I know that in 3 months I'm going to come out with Y. Like there's sort of that ratio, right? And
mm,
you just, can continue to add in. It's maybe not quite that predictable, but they have a pretty good sense of like the inputs and the outputs. And we're just not, because we're still in that experimental phase, we're just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
So I would hate to have to, make a promise to investors that if you invest this, we'll get to this number in 12 months,
Mm.
because we just may not be far enough along to really be able to guarantee that. So it ends up being a heck of a risk for kind of for everybody. And I don't want our customers to be brought in and be the subjects of that risk either.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Mark, I've got two last questions for you.
Sure.
One being from the previous podcast. So the last guest on the podcast, they left me a question to ask you. They didn't know what you do as a business or anything like that. And then I'm also going to ask you what you would like me to ask the next person. So
Mhm.
the question from the last podcast was asking when you last or when you first had your entrepreneurial spark. So when the first time that you decided I'm going to do something on my own.
Gee, that's tough. I've always been pretty creative and innovative, but I always really thought it was within like an existing process or an existing company. So I would have described myself up until probably a couple of years ago as like an entrepreneur rather than necessarily an entrepreneur. I've been really good at going into different companies and starting up kind of a new business unit.
Yeah,
Which has a lot of the same challenges as starting a startup, but it also has a certain safety net that
yeah,
the startup doesn't have. I think um, as of a couple of years ago, when I started to work with smaller startups and VC backed companies and so on, um, I started to feel like a general desire to want to do something. But it was really only probably about a year and a half ago, like around the time that I started Real Desk, that it really crystallized into like, this is what I want to do. It was always really about I'll do it if I have the right idea and the right concept, and I feel like I'm confident in it. So uh, it's always been something that I've sort of wanted to do, but it really had to coalesce into a specific set of circumstances, specific idea, and then the timing has to be right as well. Because I've done a lot of other gigs, but the timing just sort of aligned a year and a half ago to be like the right point when it's like, okay, now's the time.
nice. Okay, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. And then what would you like me to ask the next guest?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always trying to think optimistically and best case scenarios and positivity and gratitude. This is what, I'm trying to manifest, I guess. So I would say uh, to another entrepreneur, as you look forward over the next whatever time horizon you like, 6 months, 12 months, what are you most looking forward to be
Mm,
able to accomplish? With your company, with your team, with your customers, whatever it might be, like what's the thing that really makes you the most excited about, I can't wait for that day to get there.
nice. Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
I can I'm thinking about my answer, but it's not part of this. So yeah,
Yeah, but
perfect.
it's a good thing to think about, right? It's good to get excited. It's good to be optimistic. So yeah, I think about that a lot in terms of all of the cool stuff that I'm excited to have happen down the road.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, Mark, that's been great. So thank you for your time today. I'll put the links to your website in the description. Is that the best place for people to check out Real Desk?
Yeah, you can check us out on our website. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. The links to all that, it's on our website. We've got a blog, we've got a LinkedIn page. Like those are kind of our main channels. But yeah, the website's a really good space if you want to just take a look and see who we are, what we do, who our customers are, the value that we provide. Yeah, that's a pretty great place to start. And you can also see the product. We're putting more and more of details of the product and workflows and kind of interactive guided tours and things like that on there as well.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that, Mark. And yeah, speak to you soon.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to be on it, and I really appreciate you putting it all together.
No worries. Cheers.